Today, I'll be reviewing the definitive, mysterious, enigmatic peoples in history iceberg. As always, the entries towards the top of the iceberg are well known, while those at the bottom are generally considered to be more obscure. Now let's get right into it. Tupac murderer. On the evening of September 7th, 1996, the heavyweight bout between Mike Tyson and Bruce Seldon was held in the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Paradise, Nevada. Among the spectators were American hip-hop rapper and cultural phenomenon Tupac Shakur and Marion Suge Knight. After the event concluded, a scuffle broke out in the lobby of the arena where Tupac got into a physical altercation with a rival gang member named Orlando Anderson. Following this, Tupac, Suge, and their entourage left the hotel lobby and went to the Luxor Hotel for a quick change before going to a charity concert. On the ride to Club 662, where the concert was being held, a white Cadillac stopped on the right side of the vehicle Tupac and Suge Knight were inside of. The occupant from the rear driver's side opened his window and opened fire on the rapper, striking Tupac 4 times and Suge once. Tupac was immediately rushed to the hospital and succumbed to his injuries 6 days later. The individual who had opened fire on the car has never been officially apprehended. Shortly after the shooting, the prime suspect was Orlando due to the altercation shortly before. However, he had a strong alibi, and not enough evidence could put him in the backseat of the Cadillac. Rumors supported that Tupac and Suge saw the man who had shot at them, but neither has ever come forward. Suge stated he heard something and saw nothing. 26 years later, the man who killed one of hip-hop's most influential artists is still a mystery. Yosuke. Nicknamed the Black Samurai, Yosuke was an African man who arrived in Japan during the Tensho period. There's not much documentation or confirmation on where he had come from, who his parents are, or what his original name was prior to arriving in Japan. He accompanied an Italian missionary, Alessandro Valignano, to the capital of Japan. Here, he was presented to the Japanese daimyo Oda Nobunaga, who was initially very intrigued by the African man standing before him. He had thought that his skin had been painted with ink and ordered his servants to scrub the ink from his skin. It is likely that during this time in Japan, Yosuke learned Japanese, and after a period of time, he was given the name Yosuke by Nobunaga. A katana was granted to Yosuke as he was ordered to protect the daimyo until his death in June 1582. Nicknamed the Honoji Incident, Nobunaga was betrayed by his general, Akechi Mitsuhide. Yosuke was present at the time of Nobunaga's death and was captured by the general. He was spared and ordered to be taken to the Christian church in Kyoto. This is where the story of Yosuke comes to an end. The fate of the Black Samurai is still a mystery. Nikola Tesla, perhaps the most brilliant inventor of modern history, Tesla is responsible for many of the technologies we use in our daily life. Radios, cell phones, and alternate currents were all of Tesla's design. He had also had many more inventions that he had never patented or were lost over the years of his life, one of which was an item that was strong enough to cause an earthquake in the building that he lived in. It had become so violent that he had to break the machine before it could cause the building to come down. Tesla claimed that the source of his genius came from the memory exercises his mother taught him at a young age. However, some of his inventions were so far ahead of its time, like the motorized boat, that many people at the time thought Tesla to be an alien. No mortal man could create such a thing within the realm of reality. Tesla was a humanist and an incredible thinker. His inventions were created with the sole purpose of solving a problem and not for profit, like many of his colleagues at the time. Unfortunately, this came back to ruin his older years. He had become severely in debt and died in a hotel room paid for by an electrical company that he had saved from bankruptcy years prior. On the 7th of January 1943, at the age of 86, Tesla died alone in room 3327 in the Hotel New York. Tank Man. From April 15th to June 4th, 1989, Chinese university students protest the Chinese government following the political leader Hu Yibang's death. Hu was a large advocate for the free market and shared similar ideas with Western culture, which was very popular with the younger generations at the time. The other Chinese leaders didn't like this, leading to them forcing him to resign from his position as general secretary. Over 100,000 students gathered in Tiananmen Square a week after his resignation. Here, the students participated in hunger strikes. This was very effective in winning over many citizens' supports and raised distrust in the Chinese government. The protests gained so much momentum that on May 20th, the Chinese government issued martial law. They sent in over 40 military divisions to dispose of the protests. At first, the suppression was very moderate. They were similar to the typical protests you would see on CNN today. On June 4th, that all changed. The Chinese government authorized lethal force in Tiananmen Square. The soldiers opened fire on the students, murdering thousands of students within the span of minutes. Despite the threat of death, many of the Chinese protesters held their ground, one of which had been nicknamed Tank Man, a lone protester who became the symbol of resistance against the Chinese authorities. The exact identity of Tank Man remains unknown, and there are conflicting accounts regarding what happened to him after the events. According to various reports and witnesses, Tank Man was an ordinary citizen who stood in the path of a column of military tanks near Tiananmen Square. As the tanks advanced, Tank Man stood his ground and refused to move, even when the tanks tried to maneuver around him. Desmond. The moment was captured by Western journalists and photographers, and the image of the unidentified man holding shopping bags whilst standing in front of tanks quickly spread worldwide. Tank Man's act of defiance encapsulated the spirit of the Tiananmen Square protests, where people were demanding political freedom and standing up against authoritarian rule. However, the Chinese government tightly controlled information around the event, and the image of Tank Man was censored within China. Tank Man's true identity and fate following the events are shrouded in mystery, and to this day are unknown. Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper is the name given to an unidentified serial killer who terrorized the Whitechapel district of London in the late 19th century. The name Jack the Ripper originated from a letter sent to the media purporting to be from the killer. The letter was signed with the name, and it quickly became associated with the crimes. The killings attributed to Jack the Ripper occurred between August and November of 1888. The victims were all women, mainly prostitutes, and their bodies were found in or near the impoverished and crime-ridden areas of Whitechapel. The victims were brutally murdered and mutilated, displaying a level of violence that shocked the public. The exact number of victims from Jack the Ripper is uncertain, as some cases may have been falsely linked to the killer. However, the canonical 5 victims generally associated with Jack the Ripper are Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. The police investigation into the murders, led by Inspector Frederick Aberline, faced numerous challenges. The lack of advanced forensic techniques and the difficulty of gathering reliable evidence from the crime scenes hindered progress. The media coverage and public pressure added to the intensity of the investigation, but despite the efforts, the killer was never definitively identified or caught. The Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer was a notorious unidentified serial killer who operated in Northern California and the United States during the 1960s and early 70s. The name Zodiac originated from a series of taunting letters sent to local newspapers by the killer, containing cryptograms and other coded messages. The killer is believed to be responsible for at least 5 confirmed murders. The victims were typically young couples who were targeted in secluded areas, such as Lover's Lane and picnic spots. The killer would approach them and open fire with a handgun, leaving the victims dead or seriously injured. The Zodiac Killer gained significant attention by sending letters to various newspapers, in which he claimed responsibility for the murders and included details that only the killer would know. The Zodiac claimed that the solutions to the cryptograms he sent to the authorities would reveal his identity. To this day, some of the ciphers remain unsolved. The Zodiac Killer sought publicity through his letters and ciphers, and he often threatened to carry out more murders if the letters were not published by the newspaper. Anastasia Romanov. Romanov, also known as the Grand Duchess of Russia, was the youngest daughter of Tsar Nicholas II. She was born June 18, 1901 in St. Petersburg, Russia, and was a member of the renowned Romanov dynasty who had ruled Russia for over 300 years. Anastasia grew up in the opulent surroundings of the Russian imperial court. She had 3 older sisters, Olga, Tatiana, and Maria, and a younger brother, Alexei. Anastasia and her siblings were raised in a loving and sheltered environment, shielding from the political turmoil and growing discontent among the Russian population. In 1914, World War I broke out, putting a strain on Russia's resources and exasperating public dissatisfaction. The Russian Revolution of 1917 resulted in the abdication of Tsar Nicholas II, and the Romanov family was placed under house arrest. On July 17, 1918, the entire Romanov family, including Anastasia, were executed by the Bolsheviks. For many years, there were rumors and speculation that Anastasia had somehow survived the execution, leading to numerous imposters claiming to be her. However, DNA testing in the 1990s confirmed the identity of Anastasia's remains, along with those of her family members, finally putting an end to the controversies. Berserk at Stamford Bridge. At the final battle of the Viking Anglo-Saxon War, while the Vikings were retreating from the English soldiers on Stamford Bridge, a single Viking warrior held off the English army. It is estimated that he killed at least 40 soldiers with just an axe, only being stopped by one of the English soldiers stabbing him through the floor planks of the bridge. The man's true identity is unknown, but his legacy has had lasting effects on modern interpretations of Vikings. Agent 355. During the Revolutionary War, the American Army had to come up with creative tactics in order to keep up with the British Army. At the time, the British Army easily outmatched the infant military of the United States. One of General George Washington's solutions to this threat was the implementation of spies. This proved very effective over the course of the war. Many of the spies during the war gained public recognition. However, one did not. Agent 355 was a woman who was believed to be from a royal British family and had close contact with higher officers of the British Army. She provided crucial information to the American Army, including the capture of American officer John Andre, who planned to surrender America's most powerful fort to the British Army. After his capture, the British armies captured anyone who they believed to be a mole, including Agent 355. The fate of Agent 355 is unknown, known, but it is believed that she died on one of the British prisoners' ships. John Teeter. Teeter is a pseudonym used by an individual who claimed to be a time traveler from the year 2036. In 2000, Teeter started posting messages on internet forums and chat rooms describing his experiences and providing predictions about the future. Teeter claimed to be a time traveler from the year 2036 who traveled back in time to the year 1975 using a time machine installed in a 1987 Chevrolet Corvette. He claims to have traveled from a timeline that has diverged from the original timeline due to changes in the past. The original timeline is the current timeline you and I live in. He claimed that small changes in the past could have significant impacts on the future, resulting in different timelines. Teeter claimed that in his timeline, the United States had descended into a civil war that lasted from 2004 to 2008. He provided detailed information about the causes, events, and aftermaths of the Civil War. Teeter also predicted that a devastating global conflict referred to as World War III would occur in the early 21st century. He described it as a nuclear war that would involve several nations and result in widespread destruction and social collapse. Teeter provided insight into technology advancements and social changes in his timeline. He mentioned that widespread use of time travel technology, advancements in military technology, and changes in societal norms and values. Teeter claimed to be a soldier who was sent back in time to retrieve an IBM 5100 computer for his timeline's computer system. He shared some personal details about his background and family, although these claims could not be independently verified. Jimmy Hoffa. Hoffa was an American labor union leader who was born on February 14th, 1913 and disappeared on July 30th, 1975 under mysterious circumstances. Hoffa was a prominent figure in the American labor movement and served as the president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, or IBT, one of the largest labor unions in the United States at the time, from 1957 to 1971. During his tenure, the Teamsters Union grew significantly in size and influence, becoming a powerful force in the American labor and politics. However, Hoffa's leadership was also marred by allegations of corruption, ties to organized crime, and charges of bribery and other illegal activities. Although he continued to fight his legal battles and maintain his innocence throughout his life, on July 30th, 1975, Hoffa was last seen in a parking lot in Bloomfield Township, Michigan. It was never seen again. His disappearance sparked a massive investigation and has remained a subject of speculation and conspiracy theories for decades. Despite extensive searches and investigations, his fate and whereabouts remain unknown to this day, and his disappearance remains one of the most infamous unsolved cases in American history. Green Children of Woolpit. The Green Children of Woolpit is a medieval legend that tells the story of two mysterious children who appeared in the village of Woolpit in Suffolk, England during the 12th century. According to the legend, in the reign of King Stephen in the 12th century, the villagers of Woolpit discovered two children, a brother and a sister, wandering near a local wolf pit. The children were described as having greenish skin and speaking an unknown language. They wore strange clothing made of unfamiliar materials and seemed to be disoriented and in distress. The villagers took the children in and attempted to care for them. They refused to eat any food other than raw beans, and their skin gradually lost its green hue as they acclimated to their new environment. The children eventually learned to speak English and told their story. The children claimed to have come from a place called St. Martin's Land, where the sun never shone and everything was perpetually green. They said they had been herding their father's cattle when they heard a loud noise and suddenly found themselves near the wolf pit in Woolpit. Say that 3 times fast. They had no recollection of how they arrived there or what happened to them. The boy, who was reportedly weaker and more sickly, did not survive long and died shortly after being discovered. However, the girl thrived and adapted to her new life in Woolpit. She was eventually baptized and given the name Agnes. She grew up in the village, learned English, and eventually married a man from a neighboring village. The mystery of the Green Children has since still been unsolved as to where their origins are from. Satoshi Nakamoto. Nakamoto is a pseudonym used by an unknown person or persons who created Bitcoin, the world's first decentralized digital currency, and its underlying technology, blockchain. Nakamoto's true identity and background remain unknown to this day. Nakamoto claims to be a 37-year-old man living in Japan when the Bitcoin white paper was published in 2008, but this information has not been verified. The white paper outlined a new form of digital currency that utilized a decentralized network of computers known as the blockchain to enable peer-to-peer transactions without the need for intermediaries such as banks. The first block on the Bitcoin blockchain, known as the Genesis block, was mined by Nakamoto in January 2009, marking the beginning of the Bitcoin network. Satoshi was actively involved in the development of Bitcoin in its early years. years. Satoshi communicated with the Bitcoin community through online forums and email, discussing technical details and providing guidance on the implementation of the protocol. However, Satoshi gradually withdrew from public view and ceased communication in late 2010, leaving the project to the community. Since then, Satoshi's identity and whereabouts have remained a mystery. XMen of New Orleans. The XMen of New Orleans was a serial killer who operated in the city of New Orleans, Louisiana, in the United States during May 1918 to October 1919. The victims were mostly Italian-American residents, and the attacks typically occurred at night while the victims were asleep in their homes. The killer used an axe or other sharp objects to bludgeon or slash his victims, resulting in gruesome and often fatal injuries. Some of the attacks also involved the use of a panel chisel, which the killer would use to gain entry to the victims' homes. One of the distinctive aspects of the Acts of New Orleans case was the series of cryptic letters that were allegedly sent by the killer to local newspapers and police. In these letters, the killer claimed responsibility for the murders and taunted the authorities, promising to spare those who played jazz music in their homes on specific nights as a form of protection. This led to widespread speculation and fear in the community, with many residents reportedly playing jazz throughout the night to avoid being targeted by the killer. Despite extensive efforts by the police to solve the case, the Axeman was never apprehended, and the case remains officially unsolved to this day. Over the years, various suspects and theories have emerged, but no conclusive evidence has found to definitively identify the killer. Some theories suggest that the killer may have been the work of a copycat killer, while others propose different motives or suspects, but none of them have been confirmed. Le Lion. Le Lion is a mysterious figure who has been spotted in the forest of Switzerland wearing a distinctive costume and mask, often described as resembling a Grim Reaper. It wears a dark, hooded cloak along with a mask that covers their entire face, leaving only eye holes. The mask is described as white and emotionless, resembling a skull or a blank face. Le Lion is also known to wear gloves and often carries a walking stick. Despite public curiosity, Lion may just be an individual who values their privacy and wishes to remain anonymous. Their true identity has never been revealed. El Dorado. El Dorado is a legendary lost city or kingdom that was believed to be rich in gold and precious treasures. It has been the subject of numerous myths and legends and expeditions throughout history. The legend of El Dorado originated in South America, particularly in the Andean region, during the Spanish colonial period. It was believed that there was a city or kingdom where the ruler, known as the Gilded One or Golden Man, covered himself in gold dust and threw precious treasures into a sacred lake as part of a ritual. This legend of a city made entirely of gold with untold riches captured the imagination of explorers, adventurers, and treasure hunters. Inspired by the legend of El Dorado, numerous explorers and expeditions were launched in the 16th and 17th centuries in search of the fabled city. Spanish conquistadors led expeditions in search of El Dorado, but all ended in failure, with many explorers succumbing to disease, hunger, or hostile encounters with indigenous people. Other explorers also ventured into the Amazon rainforest and other parts of South America in search of El Dorado. Over time, the legend of El Dorado evolved from a literal city of gold to a symbol of unattainable wealth or a metaphor for an unfulfilled quest. The story of El Dorado has inspired countless works of literature, art, and pop culture, depicting the allure and mystery of a city filled with riches. It has also shaped the history and culture of South America, with many indigenous cultures incorporating the legend of El Dorado into their folklore and traditions. While no actual city of gold resembling the legendary El Dorado has ever been discovered, some historians and archaeologists believe that the legend may have been based on real indigenous cultures that practice gold-related rituals, such as the Mixca civilization in present-day Colombia. In modern times, gold mining and prospecting continue in the regions associated with the legend, but the mythical city itself remains elusive. Man from Torrid. The Man from Torrid is a mysterious story that has circulated in the realm of paranormal and unexplained phenomena. According to the story, in the mid-20th century, a man arrived at the Tokyo International Airport claiming to be a traveler from a country called Torrid, which he had claimed was between France and Spain. The man presented a passport from Torrid. When the airport officials checked, they could not find Torrid on any map or in any official records. The man insisted that Torrid was a well-known and established country, and he could not understand why it was not recognized by the officials. They searched his belongings and found multiple forms of identification, including a driver's license, bank statements, and other documentation, all showing his residency in Torrid. The man spoke multiple languages, including French, Japanese, and several other, which further added to the mystery. However, the next day, the man vanished from his hotel room along with all the evidence of his existence, leaving no trace behind. The story of the Man from Torrid has since become a popular tale in the realm of paranormal and unexplained events. There are several theories and explanations that have been proposed to explain the story of the man. Some believe it could have been a case of parallel dimensions or alternate realities where the man crossed over into our world from a different dimension where Torrid exists. Others think it could be an elaborate hoax or a fictional story that gained traction over time. There are also theories that the man may have been misinterpreted or exaggerated in the retelling, and the man could have been a regular traveler with a false passport or case of mistaken identity. The Gardner Museum Incident. The Gardner Museum Incident refers to a theft of valuable artwork from the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, which took place on March 18, 1990. In the early hours, two thieves disguised as police officers gained entry to the museum in Boston, Massachusetts. They overpowered the museum security guards and proceeded to steal 13 artworks. Thieves cut the artwork from their frames and left empty frames hanging on the walls, leaving the museum security and alarms untouched. The thieves of the artwork from the museum remain one of the largest and most infamous art heists in history. Despite extensive investigations by the FBI, local law enforcement, and private detectives, the stolen artwork have not been recovered to this day. The FBI have offered a substantial award for information leading to the recovery of the stolen artwork, but no credible leads have emerged. Over the years, various theories and suspects have been proposed in connection with the theft, but none have resulted in the recovery of the stolen artwork or the identification of the culprits. Some theories suggest that the theft was carried out by a criminal organization or individual with knowledge of the art world, while others propose that the artwork were taken to be used as bargaining chips in criminal activities. Several suspects have been investigated, but none have been charged or convicted in connection with the theft. Mad Gasser of Mattoon. The Mad Gasser of Mattoon refers to a series of alleged gas attacks that occurred in the town of Mattoon, Illinois during the 1940s. According to reports, residents of Mattoon claimed to have been attacked by an unknown individual who allegedly used gas or chemicals to incapacitate or harm them. Victims reported symptoms such as difficulty breathing, nausea, vomiting, dizziness, and paralysis. Some victims also reported seeing a shadowy figure or smelling a strange odor before the attacks. In response to the reported gas attacks, local authorities launched an investigation. However, despite extensive efforts, no physical evidence or suspect was ever identified or apprehended. Some speculate that the incident were the result of mass hysteria, with fear and panic spreading through the community, leading to exaggerated or false reports. The case of the Mad Gasser garnered widespread media attention at the time, and it was covered in newspapers and magazines across the country. The reported gas attacks in Mattoon gradually ceased, and the case remains unsolved. No one was ever charged or convicted in connection with the incidents, and the identity and motives of the alleged mass gasser remains unknown to this day. Evil Stick creator. The Evil Stick is a controversial toy that gained attention due to its inappropriate and offensive content. There is no known specific creator associated with the Evil Stick, as it is a generic product that was sold by various manufacturers and distributors over the years. The Evil Stick is a small plastic toy that appears to be a harmless and innocent novelty item marketed towards children. It typically resembles a magic wand or a fairy wand with colorful decorations and sparkles. When the top of the toy is removed, however, it reveals a hidden image or message of a grotesque or scary nature, such as graphic images or a disfigured face or a message with offensive language. The controversy surrounding the Evil Stick led to widespread condemnation and calls for it to be removed from store shelves. Many retailers pulled the product from their shelves and issued apologies to customers. Some manufacturers and distributors also issued recalls and discontinued the toy. The toy has since been phased out and is very rare to get your hands on at this point in time, and the original creator of the toy to this day has not been uncovered. Count St Germain. St Germain is an historical figure who is often associated with mysticism, alchemy, and the occult. He was a European nobleman who lived during the 18th century and claimed to be over 500 years old. Some sources claim he was born in the late 17th century, while others place his birth date earlier. He claimed to be immortal and showed high proficiency in various language, arts, and sciences. He also had traveled extensively throughout Europe and was associated with many prominent figures at his times, like various kings, aristocrats, and intellectuals. Despite his track record of having extensive relationships with very high-known figures at the time, his true origin and identity are unknown. However, some claim that he was an imposter and that he simply fabricated his whole story. Gil Perez. Gil Perez, also known as the Guard or the Soldier, was a historical figure known for a mysterious incident that occurred in the late 16th century. According to the story, on October 24th, 1593, Gil reportedly experienced a sudden and unexplained teleportation. He was on duty at the governor's palace in Manila when he suddenly appeared in Mexico City, which was over 9,000 miles away, wearing the uniform of a Spanish soldier. Perez was bewildered and claimed that he had no recollection on how he had got there or how much time had passed. When he appeared in Mexico City, he was disoriented and confused. He was arrested as a suspected deserter or imposter, as it was deemed impossible for a soldier to have traveled such a great distance in such a short time. Perez's claims of teleportation were not met without skepticism, and he was interrogated. During his detention in Mexico City, news arrived in the Philippines that confirmed Gil's story. It was reported that Gil had disappeared from the governor's palace in Manila on the same day that he appeared in Mexico City. Witnesses testified that Gil had been on duty just moments before he suddenly vanished. After several months of detention in Mexico City, Gil was eventually released released and sent back to the Philippines. He returned and resumed his work as a guard in the governor's palace. However, he reportedly never spoke of the incident again and continued his service as a soldier until his death. Green Boots. Green Boots, also known as Sleeping Beauty or Green Boots Marker, is a well-known landmark on Mount Everest. Green Boots is located in the death zone of Mount Everest, which refers to altitude above 8,000 meters or 26,247 feet, where the oxygen level is significantly low, and climbers face extreme weather conditions and health risks. Green Boots is a deceased climber whose body is wearing bright green mountaineer boots, which is visible to climbers on the standard northeast ridge route of Mount Everest. The climber's body is partially exposed and lying in a sleeping position, hence the nickname. The identity of the climber, known as Green Boots, is believed to be Swang Samanala, an Indian climber who went missing on Mount Everest in 1996 during an expedition. However, due to the harsh conditions and risk involved in recovering bodies in the death zone, his body has not been removed and has become a permanent fixture in the mountain. Boy in the Box. Boy in the Box, also known as America's Unknown Child, is an unsolved murder case involving the discovery of a body of a young boy in a cardboard box in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1957. The body, estimated to be between 4 and 6 years old, was found in a wooded area near Susquehanna Road. The boy's body was naked and wrapped in a plaid blanket and covered with a second blanket. The body had been severely beaten and showed signs of malnourishment. His hair had been recently cut and his body showed evidence of multiple bruises and scars. No clothing or personal belongings were found with the body, and there were no signs of identification. Despite extensive efforts by law enforcement, the identity of the boy and the circumstances surrounding his death remain a mystery to this day. Numerous leads, tips, and theories have been pursued over the years, but none have resulted in solving the case. The boy's fingerprints, dental records, and DNA have been collected and compared to the database, but no matches were ever found. Over the years, several theories have been proposed, including that the boy was a victim of child abuse, trafficking, or a botched adoption attempt. Some have suggested that he may have been a victim of familial or neighborhood violence, while others believe he may have been a victim of a random act of violence. Despite the speculation and theories, no conclusive evidence have led to any promising leads. Law enforcement agencies periodically revisit the case over the years in hopes of finding new leads or technological advancements that may aid in identifying the boy and solving the mystery. Various forensic techniques such as facial reconstruction and isotope analysis have been used to gather more information, but the boy's identity and circumstances around his death remain a mystery. Poe Toaster. The Poe Toaster is a mysterious figure who used to visit the grave of renowned American author Edgar Allan Poe every year on his birthday, January 19th, to leave 3 roses and a bottle of cognac at his gravesite in Baltimore, Maryland. The tradition of the Poe Toaster began in the 1940s or 50s, with a figure dressed in black clothing wearing a wide-brimmed hat and a white scarf. The 3 roses believed to represent Poe, his wife, Virginia Eliza Poe, and his mother-in-law, Maria Clem. The bottle of cognac would be poured over his gravesite in a toast to Poe's memory. The identity of the Poe Toaster has remained a mystery, as the individual always appears in disguise. Over the years, many theories and speculations have circulated about the identity and motives of the Poe Toaster, but no conclusive evidence or confirmation has been found. In later years, the Poe Toaster's visits became irregular, and the original figure was said to have passed the tradition down to a younger successor. However, in 2010, the Poe Toaster failed to appear, and there has been no confirmed sighting since then. Moshe Chuchani. Chuchani was a mysterious and enigmatic Jewish teacher who was known for his exceptional intellect and knowledge, but very little is known about his personal life or background. He is believed to have taught various students, including prominent intellectuals, philosophers, and scholars, in France and Israel during the mid-20th century. Chuchani was known for his unconventional teaching style, which was characterized by his deep knowledge of various subjects, including philosophy, literature, mathematics, and languages. He was known to challenge his students intellectually and encourage them to think critically and independently. He reportedly used Socratic questioning and engaged in deep philosophical discussions with his students to stimulate their intellect and broaden their understanding. Chuchani's true identity and background remain shrouded in mystery, as he never disclosed much about himself to his students or the public. Various legends and stories have emerged about his life, including claims that he was a self-taught polymath with a vast knowledge of multiple languages and disciplines. Some stories suggest that he possesses mystical and supernatural abilities. However, due to the lack of concrete information and reliable sources, much of the information about his life remains speculative. Somerton Man. The Somerton Man, also known as the Tamam Shud case or the mystery of the Somerton Man, refers to an unsolved case involving an unidentified man who was found deceased under mysterious circumstances on the Somerton beach near Adelaide, South Australia in 1948. The body of the Somerton Man was discovered with no identification or labels on his clothing. The tags had been carefully removed from his clothing and all labels had been removed from his possessions. A small scrap of paper with the words Tamam Shud, meaning ending or finished in Persian, was found in a hidden pocket of the man's pants. This led investigators to a small scrap of paper with the same words in a glove compartment of an abandoned car near the beach, suggesting a possible connection. An autopsy revealed no obvious cause of death, and toxicology tests scientists did not identify any poison or drugs in his system. Numerous theories and speculations have arisen over the years, including possibilities of espionage, murder, or espionage-related motives, but no conclusive evidence has been found. Despite extensive investigation and efforts and the involvement of various law enforcement agencies, the identity of the Somerton Man and the circumstances of his death remains a mystery to this day. Shanti Divi. Divi was an Indian girl who claimed to have the memories of a past life. Her story gained international attention in the 1930s, and she has been considered for one of the most well-documented cases of reincarnation. Divi was born on December 11, 1926 in Delhi, India. At the age of 4, she began to mention details about her alleged past life in a nearby town called Mathura. She claimed to remember being a woman named Lugdi Divi who died 11 years prior after giving birth to a son. Divi provided vivid details about her previous family, her village, and her husband's name, and other specific information about her past life that were later verified. Divi's story attracted the attention of many, and her case was investigated by various researchers, including prominent figures such as Mahatma Gandhi and paranormal investigator Dr. Ian Stevenson. She was also able to identify her former husband and son from a lineup of strangers, and she recognized and recalled specific details of her past home and village during a visit to Mathura. Divi's case has been interpreted by some as evidence for the phenomenon of reincarnation, where an individual's consciousness is believed to continue after death and be reborn in a new body. However, others have offered alternative explanations, such as cryptoamnesia or confabulation. Skeptics have raised questions about the accuracy and reliability of Divi's memories and lack of scientific proof for reincarnation. Despite this, due to the amount of verified information, there is a lot of evidence to support that she may be the first well-documented count of reincarnation. Isdal Woman. The Isdal Woman, also known as the Unknown Woman from Isdal, was a mysterious unidentified woman who was found dead in the remote area near Bergen, Norway in November 1970. Her body was badly burned, and the police found evidence that she had ingested several sleeping pills before she died. She was found wearing clothes with the labels removed, and her fingerprints had been sanded down, making it impossible to identify her. The police found several unusual items near her body, including a silver spoon with the monogram AA, a broken umbrella, a pair of glasses with non-prescription lenses, and a number of fake passports with different identities. They also discovered coded notes in her luggage, leading to speculation that she may have been a spy. Over the years, various theories have been proposed to explain the Isdal woman's identity and the circumstances of her death. Some have suggested that she was a Cold War-era spy, while others believe that she may have been involved in organized crime. Some have even speculated that she may have been a victim of a serial killer. However, the most likely answer is that she was probably a spy, and her true identity may never be known. Oslo Plaza Woman. The Oslo Plaza Woman, also known as the Unknown Woman from room 2805, was a mysterious unidentified woman who was found dead in a luxury hotel in Oslo, Norway in April 1995. Her death was ruled a suicide by the Norwegian police, but many details surrounding her identity and the circumstances of her death remain shrouded in mystery. The woman checked into room 2805 under the name Jennifer Farragate and paid for her stay in cash. She was discovered dead in her room with a gunshot wound to the head, and a gun was found next to her body. There was no identification or passports found in the room, and the labels had been removed from her clothing. Investigators found several strange details in the woman's hotel room, including a bullet hole in the bathroom sink, a missing key card from the room's electronic lock, and the absence of any personal items or belonging. A key card from another hotel room in Frankfurt, Germany was found in her room, leading investigators to speculate that she may have been involved in criminal activity or espionage. Despite numerous efforts to identify her, the woman's true identity and the circumstances surrounding her death remain a mystery. Her case has sparked widespread speculation and has been the subject of numerous documentaries and investigations over the years. Countess of Desmond. The Countess of Desmond, also known as Catherine Fitzgerald, was an Irish noblewoman who lived in the 16th century. She was remembered for her incredible longevity, with some records suggesting that she lived to be over 140 years old, although this claim is difficult to verify. The Countess was married to James Fitzgerald, the 14th Earl of Desmond, and she is said to have outlived him by several decades. According to the legend, the Countess lived such a long life because she drank from a magical spring that granted her eternal youth. She was said to have discovered the spring while walking one day, and she drank from it regularly for many years. There are not many details about the Countess, as the story is more of a legend rather than there being historical data on it, but it is interesting nonetheless. Gloria Ramirez. Gloria Ramirez, also known as the Toxic Lady, was a woman who became the subject of medical mystery in 1994 when she was admitted to the emergency room at Riverside General Hospital in California, USA. Ramirez was suffering from symptoms of late-stage cervical cancer and had been receiving treatments at home. While in the hospital, Ramirez's condition quickly deteriorated and she went into cardiac arrest. When medical staff attempted to resuscitate her, they noticed a strange oily sheen on her skin and a fruity, garlic-like odor emitting from her body. Some of the hospital staff began to feel lightheaded and nauseated, and several others reported a burning sensation in their eyes and throats. Due to the severity of the condition, Ramirez Ramirez was transferred to a different hospital where she eventually died. The cause of death was determined to be heart failure due to the late-stage cancer. However, the strange symptoms experienced by the medical staff during Ramirez's treatment led to an investigation into the incident. The hospital was evacuated and decontaminated, and several theories were proposed to explain the toxic fumes that had released by Ramirez's body. Some speculated that Ramirez had been exposed to toxic chemicals, while others suggest that her cancer treatment had caused a buildup of chemicals in her body. However, no definitive explanation for the incident was ever found, and the case remains a medical mystery to this day. Wolf Messing. Messing was a psychic performer and mentalist who was born in Poland in 1899. He is remembered for his remarkable abilities, which included telepathy, clairvoyance, and the ability to hypnotize and influence people's behaviors. Messing grew up in poverty and turned to performing as a way to earn a living. He quickly gained a reputation for his incredible skills, and his performance drew crowds from all over Europe. During World War II, Messing used his abilities to help people in need, including escaping from Nazi concentration camps and saving lives of many Jews by convincing the Gestapo not to execute them. After the war, he settled in the Soviet Union, where he continued to perform and use his abilities to help people. Messing's abilities were the subject of much debate and skepticism, and he was often accused of being a fraud. However, he maintained his abilities were genuine and refused to reveal his secrets behind his tricks. Edward Kelly. Edward Kelly, also known as Edward Talbot, was a 16th century English occultist and alchemist who gained notoriety for his association with John Dee, a prominent mathematician, astrologer, and magician who served as an advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. Kelly and Dee began working together in the 1850s, and their collaboration produced a series of texts and manuscripts on various topics related to magic and the occult. Kelly claimed to have the ability to communicate with spirits, and he provided Dee with many of the insights and messages that they used in their work. Kelly and Dee's relationship was often fraught with conflict and controversy. Kelly was a known fraudster and had been convicted of forgery and counterfeiting before he met Dee. However, Dee was fascinated by Kelly's supposed psychic abilities and continued to work with him despite the skepticism of many of his peers. The partnership between Kelly and Dee ultimately came to an end in 1587 when Kelly claimed that the spirits had ordered him to marry Dee's wife. The two men parted ways, and Kelly continued to practice alchemy and the occult until his death in 1597. Sidney Gottlieb. Gottlieb was a chemist and spy master who worked for the United States Central Intelligence Agency in the 1950s and 60s. He is best known for his involvement in the CIA's controversial MKUltra program, which aimed to develop mind control and interrogation techniques. Gottlieb was a brilliant chemist who had previously worked on a development of the poison that was used in the assassination of Leon Trotsky. In the early 1950s, he was recruited by the CIA to head up its newly established chemical division, which was tasked with developing new methods of interrogation and psychological warfare. These experiments involved using drugs like LSD and mescaline, as well as other techniques like electroshock therapy and sensory deprivation. The goal was to develop methods of controlling human behavior and extracting information from unwilling subjects. Gottlieb's experiments were highly controversial and ethically questionable, and the CIA's involvement in the program was eventually exposed in the 1970s. Gottlieb retired from the CIA in 1972 and moved to a remote cabin in the woods where he spent the rest of his life growing fruits and vegetables, or so they say. Unknown Woman Obscene. The Unknown Woman Obscene is the name given to an unidentified young woman whose death mask became a popular fixture in artistic and cultural circles in the early 20th century. The death mask was created in the late 19th century and was later used by a Parisian manufacturer of anatomical models who used it as the basis for a model called La Lacune de la Seine. According to the legend, the young woman was found drowned in the Seine River in Paris. Her beauty was said to be so striking that the authorities ordered a death mask to be created of her face, in the hopes that someone would recognize her and come forward with information about her identity. However, despite widespread publicity, no one ever came forward to identify the woman, and she remains a mystery to this day. It is said to have been the inspiration for the first CPR mannequin, as his enigmatic smile was thought to represent the perfect expression of calm and detachment. Benjamin Kyle. Kyle is the name adopted by a man who was found unconscious behind a dumpster in Richmond Hill, Georgia in 2004. He had no identification or memory of his past life, and for over a decade he remained a mystery, known only as the man with no name. Despite extensive efforts by law enforcement and private investigators, no one was able to identify Kyle or uncover any information about his past. He had no social security number or fingerprint records, and his DNA did not match any known individual in law enforcement databases. In 2015, Kyle was able to obtain a new social security number and was legally declared a new person by a judge in Florida. He has since been building a new life, advocating for rights of individuals who suffer from amnesia and other brain injuries. While the true identity of Kyle remains a mystery, his case raises awareness about the challenges faced by those who suffer with memory loss or cognitive impairments. RSDS. RSDS was an ancient Greek poet and traveler who lived in the 7th century BCE. According to the legend, RSDS wrote a poem called the Armaspia, which describes his travels to the land of Armaspi, a mythical tribe of one-eyed people who were said to guard a hoard of gold. In the poem, he claimed that he was taken taken by Apollo to the land of Ormaspi, where he witnessed their way of life and their battles with griffins. He also claimed that he died during his travels but was brought back to life by Apollo and returned to Greece to share his story. The story of RSDS and his travels to the land of Ormaspi has been subject to much debate among scholars. Some believe that the story was simply a work of fiction, while others believe that it may have been based on real-life events to regions such as Central Asia or Serbia. Li Qingyun. Li Qingyun was a Chinese herbalist and martial artist who lived to the age of 256 years, according to the records kept by the Chinese government. Born in 1677 in the province of Sichuan, Yang began studying herbs and traditional Chinese medicine at a young age. He also studied martial arts and was known for his incredible strength and agility. He became famous in China for his longevity and was said to have had 24 wives and over 200 descendants by the time of his death in 1933. He attributed his long life to a diet of herbs, including goji berries and ginseng, and a lifestyle of meditation and exercise. While some skeptics have questioned the veracity of the claims about his age, his story continues to be celebrated in China as an example of the power of traditional medicine and healthy living. Dead Pirate Roberts. Dead Pirate Roberts, also known as DPR, was a pseudonym used by Ross Ulbricht, the founder of the infamous darknet marketplace, the Silk Road. Silk Road was a platform where users could buy and sell illegal drugs, fake IDs, and other illicit goods and services anonymously using cryptocurrency. He adopted the moniker Dead Pirate Roberts as a reference to a character from the book The Princess Bride, who is replaced by multiple individuals over time. He reportedly saw himself as the latest incarnation of this character, who was seen as a hero and a symbol of resistance against authority. In 2013, he was arrested by the FBI and charged with a range of crimes related to his involvement with the Silk Road. He was convicted on charges of drug trafficking, money laundering, and computer hacking, among others, and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Despite his incarceration, the legacy of DPR and the Silk Road has continued to influence the darknet and the world of cryptocurrency, as well as sparking debate about online privacy, government surveillance, and the regulations of emerging technologies. Illicus. Illicus was a Hungarian serial killer who was believed to have murdered at least 24 women during the early 20th century. He was born in 1877 in the town of Szentkoda, Hungary. Kiss served in the Austro-Hungarian army during World War I and was later presumed to have died in combat. However, in 1916, police in Budapest discovered the preserved bodies of 24 women in Kiss's home, which he had rented out during his absence. Kiss had been using the home as a base for his murders, luring women there with the promises of marriage and then poisoning them with arsenic. He's believed to have stolen the victims' life savings and jewelry after killing them. After the discovery of the bodies, police launched a mass manhunt for Kiss, but he was never found. He was eventually declared dead in 1936, and the case remains unsolved to this day. Prahlad Jani. Prahlad Jani, also known as Mataji, was an Indian ascetic who claimed to have lived over 70 years without consuming food or water. He was born in 1929 in the state of Gujarat, India, and claimed to have been blessed by a goddess at the age of 8, which enabled him to live without sustenance. He gained international attention in 2003 when he underwent a series of medical tests at a hospital in India to verify his claims. During the 10-day study, he was kept under constant surveillance and did not consume any food or water. Despite this, he did not show any signs of dehydration or malnutrition, and his body maintained normal functions. He underwent a second study in 2010, this time at a hospital in Stirling, India, where he was observed for 2 weeks. The results of the study were inconclusive, but doctors noted that his brain appeared to be functioning normally despite the lack of food and water. Johnny's claims have been met with skepticism by some scientists and medical experts who argue that it is impossible for a human being to survive such a long period of time without sustenance. However, he and his followers maintain that his ability is the result of spiritual practices and divine intervention. Terrer was a French showman and performer who lived in the late 18th century. He is perhaps best known for his insatiable appetite and bizarre eating habits, which made him a popular attraction in the Parthian sideshows and carnivals. He was said to be able to consume enormous quantities of food in a single sitting. He was known to eat live animals such as snakes, lizards, and even puppies. He also reportedly ate garbage and carrion and was known to have eaten an entire cat in front of witnesses. Despite his bizarre behavior, he was not considered mentally ill and was able to function normally in everyday life. He was even recruited by the French military during the Napoleonic Wars, where he was used as a spy due to his ability to swallow and conceal messages. Terrer's life came to an abrupt end in 1798 when he died at the age of 26 from tuberculosis. At the time of his death, his body was said to be so bloated and swollen that it had to be dissected in order to be buried. The Sauter Children. The Sauter Children were 5 siblings who disappeared on the night of December 24th, 1945 in Fayetteville, West Virginia. The children's parents, George and Jenny Sauter, and 4 of their other children escaped from their burning home, but the 5 missing children, ranging in the age of 5 to 14, were never seen again. The circumstances surrounding the disappearance of the children were mysterious and controversial. Despite extensive searches and investigations, no trace of the missing children were ever found. The official cause of the fire was attributed to faulty wiring, but the Sodders believed that the children had been kidnapped and that the fire was set intentionally to cover up the crime. The Sodders spent the rest of their lives searching for answers, investigating leads, and appealing to authorities to reopen the case. Over the years, various theories had been put forward to explain the disappearance of the children, including organized crime, local corruption, and even the involvement of the Italian government. Despite the lack of conclusive evidence, the case of the Sodder children has remained a subject of interest and speculation for many people, including myself. Black Volga murderers. The Black Volga murderers were a group of criminals who were said to have operated in various parts of the Soviet Union, particularly in the 1960s and 70s. The group were named after the black-colored Soviet-made luxury car, the Gaz-21, also known as the Volga, which they were said to use to abduct their victims. According to urban legend and rumors, the Black Volga murderers would drive around in their cars looking for potential victims, particularly children and young women. They were said to lure the victims into the car with promises of money and other incentives before abducting and killing them. Some stories have also claimed that the group was involved in black market organ trafficking. However, there is little concrete evidence to support the existence of the murderers as an organized criminal group. Some experts suggest that the stories were created and spread as a form of social control and moral panic by the Soviet government in order to discourage citizens from trusting strangers and to reinforce traditional family values. Indrid Cold. Indrid Cold, also known as the Grinning Man, is a figure of urban legend and paranormal lore. He is said to be a humanoid entity with a wide, eerie smile and large hypnotic eyes. He was reportedly first sighted in the mid-1960s in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and has since been linked to other sightings of unidentified flying objects and other paranormal phenomena. Some people who have claimed to have encountered him reportedly feeling a sense of overwhelming dread and fascination in his presence, as if he had some sort of hypnotic or mind-controlling abilities. Others describe him as a friendly entity who communicates telepathically with those he encounters. There are many theories about the nature and origins of Indrid Cold, ranging from extraterrestrial visitors to interdimensional beings or even some sort of demonic entity. However, there is no concrete evidence to support the existence of Indrid Cold or any of the alleged sightings or encounters with him. Teresa Newman. Teresa Newman was a German mystic and visionary who lived from 1898 to 1962. She is said to have experienced stigmata, the spontaneous manifestation of the wounds of Christ on her hands, feet, and forehead, as well as other mystical experiences. Newman's alleged stigmata was first reported in 1926, and she continued to experience it intermittently for the rest of her life. She also claimed to have experienced visions and revelations to possess the gift of healing. Many people who came to see her and were reportedly cured of various illnesses and afflictions. Newman's case was extensively studied by medical doctors and religious authorities, some of whom were skeptical of her claims. However, others believed that her stigmata was genuine and that she had a special connection to God. Alexander Solnik. Alexander Solnik, also known as Super Killer, was a notorious Russian hitman who operated in the 1990s. He was known for his skill with firearms and his ability to evade law enforcement. Solnik was infamous for his ruthlessness and willingness to kill anyone who got in his way, including fellow gang members. He was born in 1960 in the Soviet Union and began his criminal career in the late 1980s as a member of a local gang. He quickly gained a reputation as a skilled hitman and was soon in high demand for his work across the country. He was eventually arrested in 1994 and sentenced to prison for several murders. However, he managed to escape from custody in 1995 and fled to Greece, where he continued to carry out contract killings. However, he was eventually killed in a shootout with Greek police in 1997. Edward Mordrick. Edward Mordrick was a man who, according to the urban legend, was born with a second face on the back of his head. The face was said to be fully formed and capable of making facial expressions but could not speak or eat. The story goes that Mordrick was tormented by the face throughout his life and eventually committed suicide at the age of 23. While the story of Mordrick has been widely circulated on the internet and in popular culture, there is little historical evidence to support it. No contemporary accounts of Mordrick's life or death exist, and the story appears to have originated as a work of fiction in the early 20th century. Who put Bella in a witch elm? Who put Bella in a witch elm is a phrase that refers to a mysterious case in England in the 1940s. In 1943, the remains of a woman was found inside of a witch elm tree in Hagley Wood, Worcester. The woman's identity was never discovered, and the circumstances of her death remains a mystery to this day. The discovery of the woman's remains was made by 4 young boys who were playing in the woods. They found a large witch elm with a hollow trunk, and inside they found a human skull. The police were called to the scene, and a search of the area revealed the rest of the woman's body inside the tree. It was determined that she had been murdered, as there was evidence of blunt force trauma to her skull. The investigation into the case continued for several years, but no suspects were identified, and the case eventually went cold. The phrase, "Who put Bella in a witch elm?" became associated with the case due to the graffiti that was found on a nearby wall shortly after the woman's remains were discovered. The phrase has since become a cultural meme, and the case remains a popular subject of speculation and investigation among true crime enthusiasts and amateur sleuths. Adam Rainer. Adam Rainer is the only person in recorded history to be both a dwarf and a giant. He was born in Austria-Hungary and grew normally until he was about 18 years old, reaching the height of 4 feet 6 inches. However, from then on, he began to experience rapid growth, and by the age of 32, he reached a height of 7 feet 8 inches, making him one of the tallest people in the world. Rainer's medical condition was a result of a rare genetic disorder known as acromegaly, which resulted from an excess of growth hormones in the body. Despite his unusual height, Rainer's life was difficult. He suffered from numerous health problems, including spinal curvature, poor eyesight, and heart problems. He was also reportedly unhappy with the unusual appearance, and he was said to have been shy and retiring in public. After his death in 1950, Rainer's body was donated to medical research, and his skeleton is now on display at the Museum of Natural History in Vienna, Austria. Rainer's life remains a unique and fascinating case study in medical history. I do hope you enjoyed this video, and if you stuck around this long, I'd like to say thank you. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a like and comment what you think about some of the things I talked about. If you didn't like the video, just hit the dislike button twice for me. Also, if you're feeling generous, you can also subscribe. It's free and it also helps me out a lot. My name is Sleepy, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.